George Durkee with yet another in our exciting series of creating a fire incident map for Columbia College. And in video 6, which showed you how to create a PDF, and that's what I wanted sent to me, at about the 15-minute and 50-second mark, I talk about how it's important to get these maps out there. An incident map, you've got either firefighters or SAR people waiting, and how you can just kind of overlook some mapping and data that you might otherwise want to correct. And while that's definitely true, it also occurred to me that I should have spent some time showing you how to correct any misalignment. So for instance, here's the final PDF map I did, and you'll notice how the fire line and the fire perimeter don't meet there, and on the spot fire here, it's really badly out of alignment. And so, in some ways, like I said, it's okay, and especially for this class, I'm not looking for a perfect map. I'm looking for you guys to understand how to use the basic tools and put it together and have, as I said earlier, the basic elements of north arrow and all that sort of thing in there. But on the other hand, I didn't show you how to correct this stuff and how to use the editing reshape tools, and there's also a geoprocessing tool you can use. So we're going to go over that, and if you've already done your map or you don't have time, don't worry about this. It would be great if you can go back and correct your map if you've made similar mistakes, although with luck you guys are more careful than I was here. But I do want you to know how to use them, and so they're in the back of your mind when you do, a map for Jeff, or if you've got a job that requires mapping, and you won't want to put something like this out, and especially, for instance, if you're in a city parcel mapping job or something like that, you absolutely can't have errors like that. So in Arc Pro, I actually corrected those errors. So you'll notice here where the lines didn't agree, they're now on one common boundary there. And the same with the spot fire. The boundary of the line now agrees with the boundary of the fire area. So what I'd like you guys to do is we're just going to create a practice polygon and a practice fire line, and we'll draw a couple of lines and polygons, purposely draw them out of alignment, and then I'll show you how to bring them back into alignment. So go into your database and go into your Fire geodatabase and right click, and let's add new. We're going to add a feature class, and we're going to call this practice. I'm back. Okay, just as I was about to show you a step, Pro crashed on me, and so I restarted it, and notice the pop-up I get, project recovery. The backup is newer than the saved project. Would you like to recover your work from the backup? And as you remember, I set mine to backup every 3 minutes. So in this case, yes, I'd like to recover the old or the most recent backup. So anyway, that's just a demo of how the backup recovery works and why it's important. So let's go back to what I was doing here. In your Fire geodatabase, let's create two practice feature classes. One will be line and one will be polygon. So go to new, go to feature class, and let's call this practice polygon and practice polygon. And polygon is already chosen there. And let's go to next. We don't need any fields because we're just practicing. Now in this case, let's actually assign it a coordinate system. So I'm going to assign it UTM Zone 10N, which is where it's located, and then finish. And we should have done that when we created the other ones, but we were just moving right along. Okay, now let's create a line feature class, and let's call this practice line, practice line, and this will be a line. Let's go next, next, and it's already chosen zone 10 and finish. Okay, let's just look for a space to draw these. Now remember, you want to do this within map. So for instance, if you were trying to correct your layout, you can edit and correct within that, but it's really better to do it on your map, because assuming you've got your layout exactly as you want it, then you don't want to mess around possibly moving it into a new area or something like that. So make your editing changes on the map tab, and they'll be reflected, of course, on the layout, simply because you're changing the data set that it's derived from. And as you know, we've created a bookmark, so we can always come back to this exact place. So let's just go off here, and we'll just have a little practice area here. Anywhere on the map is fine. And notice how, of course, when you created the feature classes, it's added them over here. So let's go into edit mode, start an editing session, and we're going to create. So your create features comes up, and if your pin isn't already down, then anchor it into place to make sure it doesn't disappear on you. And we're going down here to practice Polygon, and here are the create tools that allow us freehand, and there's the Polygon click by click. So let's do a freehand one, and to start drawing, I've left clicked to establish it, and just coming around, and we'll make a little indentation there, and single click to end it. Now let's do the same thing. We'll do a line, and let's do the regular line tool where it's click by click. Now I can't remember if I made this clear in the original, but you have snapping activated, and that helps you keep your line right on the nearest feature to keep them exactly aligned. But what we want to do here is just go out a little ways, just like I did. I missed, as you may remember, I made a few points. There we go. Let's come around here. And then I double clicked to end it, although I still left a gap here. Well, in any event, you can see how I'm not aligned very well there. And so there's a number of mistakes. So I'll show you a couple of ways of repairing that. So the first, and probably the easiest, especially if you're dealing with just one or two corrections you have to make, we'll zoom in here and get a closer look at it. This is quite a ways out, and actually, so the first way to do it is to modify it, and you highlight the feature that you want to modify. So for instance, we already have the line I just drew highlighted to do, and we're still in edit mode here, is we want to modify the chosen, the selected line here. And we could modify the polygon if we selected that, but let's stick with the line here I drew. So I go to modify, and then I choose the Reshape tool, and so these tools bring up the tools that are available. So what you do here is you click at the start of where you want to reshape it. And so now I'm just going along the boundary where I wanted it, and I'm using the, then you double click, and notice how it just reshapes that divot there and brings it back in. And we can do the same thing here. Start over here and just run along the line. The snapping tool brings you right on the line. And there you go. Now I'll show you the other way to do it. I'm holding down the C key, which overrides my edit. I'm just bringing this down a little bit, and then I'll zoom in just slightly and maneuver it over here. Okay. Now notice that I still have a bunch of areas that are quite a bit off. So we're next going to use a analysis tool from the toolbox, and that will snap to a chosen feature class within a certain distance, which is pretty useful for single feature class, or for single drawings that you didn't do too well. You know, you might just want to, in fact, in this case, you might just want to retrace the whole thing. But if you have a lot of data over, you know, a large map. So for instance, a few years back, I was doing a map for the Park Service, and one of the rangers had hand-drawn all of his trips over the years, the routes he took over all of Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park, and that's over 40 years. So just a huge amount of lines and routes he'd taken pretty much just everywhere in the park. It was darned impressive. But he had hand drawn it using I think National Geographic Topo or whatever it is. So a lot of his routes, when I converted it all to Arc to create a poster size map, didn't align with trails in the areas where he was actually on a trail, though a lot of his routes were cross country. In any event, to clean up the map, and rather than go over and retrace every route so it showed on a trail when he was on a trail, I used this snapping feature in the toolbox. So one thing you do when you use that is you set tolerances, and so to do that you actually want to measure the distance that you want to snap it into. So I'm going to measure here. So that's 60 meters. And this one here is 95 meters. So that gives you an idea of what you'll want the snapping tolerance to be within. So let's say I set it to 100 meters, and it should bring most of these into a line, and a few of them it won't, and I'll show you why that is as well. So let's get out of the distance, measure distance tool here. And so next we want to go to analysis, and then open up your toolbox, and again lock it into place. And right now I have snap as a recent toolbox, but this particular one you get to from editing, and it's down here under snap. So then a dialog box comes up, and our input feature is the one that we want to change. So we want to change the practice line, and we want it to snap to the practice polygon. And here you decide whether you want the endpoints or the vertex or the edges to align. And in our case, we want the edges, the edge of the line to match up. And let's give it a distance of 100 meters. Yeah, 100. and then switch it to meters. And I wanted, well, you want to set it to undo, but I've done this several times and it's not going to allow me. But anyway, let's go run. And you'll notice it didn't do a great job there. And the reason is that there has to be a vertex there to actually have it line up, because otherwise it's going from vertex to vertex and it won't fill in that area until there's a vertex in here to bring it up there. And it sounds a little confusing, so I'll demo what that is. So back to edit mode. And the point I was making is, if you have a whole bunch of straight lines over a large area, this is the tool to use. So here we want to modify again, and we want to edit the vertices, and we'll actually want to add a couple of vertices. So here's the add right here, and so we'll add one there, we'll add one there, we'll add one here. Now let's run that tool again. Let's put one over here and one here. So now we'll run the tool again and show you how to do that. So back to the tool, oops, back to analysis and the toolbox. And we've already got it highlighted here. And so let's run through that again. So we want the practice line to go to the practice polygon and edge, and another 100 meters. And let's run it again. See, so once it has those vertex back in there, then it can pull it up to the line. So that's still not as pretty as we want it here. Notice we still have a bit out here. We can do it the other way around. So for instance, we can do the polygon to the line. So this is dependent on which you want most accurate. So if the polygon is really the fixed thing and you can't fool around with it, then you'll have to do it this way. And in this case, maybe even with redraw it. But I'll show you what happens. If you'll remember, we drew the polyline or polygon with the freehand tool rather than the point-to-point regular polygon tool that we used with a line. So that treats the number of vertexes differently. So let's take a look at that. Back to our favorite edit mode. Back to modify, we're going to select the polygon. Okay, so now we have the polygon selected, and we're going to edit vertices. And so notice, let's get rid of the line just briefly here. So you'll notice that when you're drawing the polygon with the freehand tool, it just automatically puts in a vertex as you go. You don't have to click and do it. And so you have both the vertex, but you also have these little directional handles that allow you to change the shape there. So one thing I didn't mention in the last one is I'm trying to automate this, but you can also use the vertex. You can actually just grab one and you can try and align things that way. So that's yet another way to bring things into alignment if you need to. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to do the exact same thing, but we're going to do it with the polygon to line instead of the other way around. So back to analysis, tool, snap, and this time we're going to put in a polygon to practice line, and then edge, and then 100 meters, And let's run that. Let's get rid of the Vertex. Well, let's run it. And now let's get rid of the Vertex there just to clean it up a bit. Let's clear that. So you see that actually did a better job, simply because you had more vertices to help you align it. But it's still, you know, off here and there. But once again, it's practicing with these tools and deciding if you just want to redraw the whole thing or exactly what you want to do. And so if you guys have the time, I would really recommend that you practice with some of these tools. So for instance, you have a whole bunch of split, merge. We use the Reshape tool, and in the last share video, we'll use the annotation one. And so let's use the split tool here and I'll show you what that does. So I click once outside, double click, and that splits it into two. So let's deselect it, we'll clear it, and now we go to select again. And so you've got that side, and then you've got that side. And that's sometimes useful. In fact, actually, it's very useful if you've drawn extra lines. So for instance, if you get a GPS route, something's from a person's GPS in the field, you get this effect called multipath. So that means that if you have a rock or a steep valley wall and you're taking a GPS track or waypoints, that the location of the GPS point can be thrown way off because the signal coming from the satellite bounces off the canyon wall or the nearby rock and then to your GPS. And so the GPS is dependent on the time from where the GPS is to the satellite, and it knows what that is and uses that to calculate distance. But if it goes a slightly longer distance by bouncing, then you get an incorrect point. And so when I've taken GPS track logs from searches in the bottom of the Grand Canyon, you just get a huge spaghetti mess because stuff is bouncing all over the place. And so with some work, you can actually recreate where the searcher was. But then you've got to go out and get rid of all these other points and lines. And so you use the split tool and just go through one by one. It's kind of tedious, but you want an accurate rendering of where the person searched. And so you can do the same thing with the polygon. Let's get rid of the line here. And so you use the split tool, and we need to select it. So use the split tool and click on the outside. You can make it any shape you want. Double click at the end. And so now it's made two polygons. And you can see that if we go into the attribute table. Bring it down. So now it's made two. And then, because we're all having fun here, you can go to the merge tool and you can bring them back together. And using the split tool is sometimes a way to bring, or I'm sorry, using the merge tool is sometimes a way to bring a couple of polygons that don't meet in the exact place they should and bring them together into a merge, and then run the split tool to give a common boundary. So the merge tool, you bring up the merge tool here on the right, and it's a modify feature tool. So the layer we're acting on is the practice polygon, and then it tells you of the two which you're going to preserve the data from. And so that's important if you filled in field names and things like that. So that's the one that would keep the labels or any other information you have it. and the other one, you would lose that information. So that's something to consider when you're doing a merge. And then just go ahead and merge, and poof, it's gone. So anyway, that's some of the tools, some of the very basic editing tools in ArcGIS Pro, and for that matter, desktop, that I think you really should get familiar with, because, you know, as I said earlier, we were just churning out that map, but a lot of the work you're going to do in GIS is going to take a lot more precision and ultimately a better looking map. So you do need to know how to use those. So anyway, I'd recommend, as I said, I just recommend creating a couple of practice line and features just to practice, and then go ahead and use any of the other tools here. Oops, sorry, that's not it. And any of the other tools here. There's a zillion of them here, and you know, they'll all do all sorts of things. Okay, so that's it for this supplemental to the creating a PDF map, and then the last one, really the last one, will be how to share that into Arc Online. So thanks.